Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Council on October 18th. I will now call this meeting to order. I will turn it over to Councillor Catherine Moore Coburn to read our land acknowledgement statement this evening.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. This evening or this afternoon, I have the honor of presenting our land acknowledgement statement, but also reflecting upon it. And with Council's permission, I thought I'd flip the order today and start with a reflection and finish with the land acknowledgement statement. Reflections, in my opinion, should include action towards reconciliation. And so I took some time to delve into best practices and recommendations associated with municipal land acknowledgements. And I was reminded of a few things, and I learned a few new things as well. Best practices dictate that the statement should be based upon input from our local First Nations groups. Ours has been, but perhaps not enough. I'm personally feeling a bit unsure of how our current statement came to be and which groups were consulted and had input into it, and specifically if the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation was consulted and offered a chance for input. So later on in tonight's agenda, when we talk about our land acknowledgement statement and take some time to review it, I wonder if we might consider adding that extra step before we approve a new one. Many municipalities trial their statements for a period of time, allowing for input along the way. I want to ensure we've adequately engaged local First Nations groups on the wording and that our words reflect the fact that Indigenous residents are still here and that we intend to build authentic relationships with them. I wonder if we could view this statement as a living document and remain open to ongoing feedback. And then personally, I still have some homework to do. My learning about First Nations peoples and treaties is not yet complete. I will continue to educate myself on both historical and current contexts. I look forward to the Indigenous cultural training planned for council and staff later this month. And finally, I hope that our land acknowledgement statement continues to be meaningful as we all work towards understanding and what reconciliation looks like in our work as municipal councillors. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires, known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn, for that. So moving on, the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda today? Seeing none, I will read the recommendation that the agenda be approved as presented. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Winters? Councillor Day? Is there any discussion? I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, you may declare at any time throughout the meeting if one should arise. The next is the minutes of the council meeting held on October 4th.
I have missed announcements after minutes of the previous meeting, but my order may be slightly different from yours.
Announcements are coming up after minutes here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, we're minutes of previous meetings and then we move on. Recommendation is that the minutes of the council meeting held on October 4th, 2023 be adopted. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Scholdice, is there any discussion? I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Under announcements, does any member wish to make an announcement? Councillor Day.
My apologies for getting the order wrong there. I just was wondering if we could get some clarification from staff about garbage pickup. I know we have talked, this is, we've been communicating with public about how garbage is picked up now. Perhaps a consideration that could use some further explanation is whether or not multiple bags will be picked up from one container. Some residents who try and reduce their plastic consumption will use reusable bags for their garbage. And as garbage pickup gets a little bit stricter about what they'll accept, that's a question I've fielded recently.
Good evening to you, Mayor Carlton. Thank you, Councillor Day, for the question. So yes, we have had a number of inquiries coming from residents, so it's a good opportunity to share how our current contract works in regards to general waste collection. So residents across the township of Georgian Bluffs are able to place out at the curbside up to 4 bags of garbage each week. Each bag of garbage should be tagged. There are size and weight limits to the garbage that can be put out, but no minimum size. We've had this contract in place since I believe 2021 or thereabouts, and the criteria around the contract have not changed. However, the drivers we have performing the service have gone through significant change over that period. Drivers who had got used to doing things one way, not necessarily following the rules of our contract or following the terms of the contract, have now been replaced by drivers who are fresh out of their training and know exactly what they should and by default what they should not be collecting. So it is quite clear it's up to 4 bags of garbage. I know that many residents, for a number of different reasons, will use a plastic garbage can to collect their waste in during the week, and some will present that can at the bottom of their drive for collection. For a number of health and safety reasons, drivers are instructed not to lift the can and empty the can into the back of the vehicle. And so they'll be reaching into the can, grabbing the bag, which has got a tag on it, and taking it out. So if you've got a black bag or 2 black bags in a plastic bin, which have got the tag on the top, and they're within the size and the weight restrictions, they'll reach into the can and they'll grab those 2 bags and they'll put them into the back of the truck. Many residents over time have got used to putting multiple carrier bags or milk bags with garbage in. So they'll have one can filled with lots of smaller bags, and they'll put a tag on the top. And as I say, our drivers have in the past taken those, but drivers today are clearly being instructed to take only 1 up to 4 tagged bags of garbage. So if you've got a garbage can which has got 10 small bags of garbage and you put a tag on the top, they'll be taking just the 1 bag off the top. They won't be taking the 10 bags within that. And that's really to do with the fact they've been instructed not to lift the garbage can and dump the garbage can into the back, because they were getting workplace injuries associated to that. So they are taking the bags out of the can. So the answer for that, and I can see why some residents would be frustrated, is to put a black bag into your garbage can, put lots of small bags into the top, tie that black bag up, slap a sticker on the top, a tag on the top of it, and they'll lift that and put that into the truck. And I do appreciate that is asking residents to put more plastic into the system, not something we wish to encourage. And so we'd be happy to work with residents and provide some information on other ways in which residents might be able to manage their garbage on a week-to-week basis. And myself and Hayley can go and have a look at our website, see what advice we might be able to provide on ways in which you can try and eliminate plastic from your waste stream while still meeting our contract requirements of 1 tag per bag, up to 4 bags a week. And if you put 4 tagged carrier bags out, that's the same as if you put 4 large black bags filled with 10 small carrier bags in each one. And I do recognise the challenges that can create. This is one of the many things that I hope that we'll be able to address and look at alternative ways, more sustainable ways, more environmentally friendly ways of delivering waste management services into the future once we get to our new contract, which will kick in 2026.
Thank you for that, Mr. Lovely. And I'll go over to Councillor Schuldeis.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Carlton. While we're still in announcement period, I don't necessarily have an announcement, but rather a comment. On October 14th, I attended the Revolution Fair at Cobble Beach, and I thought it was a great event. I just wanted to say I thought we had some really good engagement. I attended it and I learned a lot, and it definitely opened my mind and gave me some different perspectives about electric vehicles and the future of our municipality in terms of what we're going to be able to offer and just electric vehicles as a whole. And I just wanted to say thank you to Cobble for sponsoring that, and thank you to our municipality for hosting. Rather, thank you to Cobble for hosting and our municipality for putting it together. I just wanted to say thanks. It was a great event.
I would agree. It was a great time. Councillor Day?
I concur, and also want to make sure we thank the volunteers who were there as well with their personal vehicles and those who organized the event. I think the Georgian Bluffs Climate Action Team might have been involved, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, I think they were involved, and yes, it was an excellent afternoon with nice sunny weather and lots to learn. Any other announcements? Deputy Mayor Pringle.
Mayor Carlton, this is a question for Niall again too there. Sorry to go back to the garbage, but I'm going to go back to the garbage. On recycling, clear plastic bags are allowed with recycling? First question.
So you, Mayor Carlton to Deputy Mayor Pringle, that's an interesting question. So yes, our current contract allows for the collection of bagged recycling. The interesting thing is that, strictly speaking, the clear plastic bags which your recycling is placed in are not in themselves one of our recyclable plastics that can be collected. So according to the letter of the contract, what the waste collectors should be doing is emptying the bag into the truck and leaving you the bag afterwards, which they will do. But you should be leaving it undone for them to be able to do it. So it shouldn't be tied so they can empty that bag into the back of the trucks. To be fair, I know a number of residents do still, and just to talk about following rules and all that sort of stuff, I know a number of residents use clear plastic bags and they are collected routinely week after week and thrown into the back of the truck. It would form a point of contamination in our waste stream, but there will be others. So if residents are finding that they're using clear plastic bags right now and they're being collected, don't stop. Please continue. But to the letter of our contract, recycling should be presented in a blue box, which should measure approximately 2 feet high by about 18 inches wide. That's the only container which is actually approved for recyclings to be collected from. So if you're getting away with a clear plastic bag, you aren't strictly following the rules, but until they stop collecting, you can continue.
No, thanks for the information there, Niall, because yes, my recycling is still sitting in my mailbox in the clear plastic bag. So I didn't know whether it was the clear plastic bag was my issue or something they saw in the bag they didn't like.
No, through you, Mayor Carlton, it is my first bet would be to take that out, put it into a blue box and see if they collect it next time round. They should be leaving green tags if they're refusing a collection for some reason, but I know that they don't necessarily always need green tags.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone. We have no public hearings this evening. We do have delegations regarding items on the agenda, and I will just read this first. Any person who wishes to appear before council regarding an item on the agenda shall make written application to the clerk by 3 p.m. the day of the meeting. To register, go to www.georgianbluffs.ca/delegations or call the clerk's office at 519-376-2729, extension 603. We have 3 delegates here this evening, and you each have 5 minutes to speak. So I'll start with Jen Bylaw about Bass Lake access.
Hi, sorry, I'm not a great public speaker. I am Jen Bilo and I live at 122 Lakeview Drive. I'm here to speak on the public access and proposing a community-run access point at the second access on Lakeview Drive. Me and my husband and our family moved to the area in 2019, late 2019. We both live, work in the community. I work at Cramo and my husband is a military member at CFB Bayford. We have a family, small little guy, 8 years old, who would love to go play in the lake. Unfortunately, as the access stands at this point, it is a very steep drop to maybe a 16-foot ledge to walk down, so he has not been able to do that. When we purchased our property, we were provided with a plan of the area that was certified by the city, Plan 755, which included access points 1 and 2 on that plan. It was also part of our listing that there was public access allowed. Now, our realtor was very diligent and did tell us that it was not a great access point. So in 2021, we had our community run annual meeting, at which time me and my husband brought this up to our community about making that public access point better. It was discussed. It was mostly amicable. A lot of people offered, including there, that we could use her access, as she's a Lakeside member. But we would like to just be able to walk up there with our little guy and take a fishing, maybe put canoe in the lake. And it has been divisive in our community, but really there are very few members that are against it. I was at the current meeting in early September, late August of this year. To my recollection, there were only 5 families out of the entire area that were against that access being opened. And in speaking at that meeting, one of those members was brought around to being more amicable to the public, privately owned public access. I don't know what else I can speak to you about. We have 11 families, that's 11 individual houses that are committed to funding and building a safe access point. And we would just like you to consider that. We haven't planned anything, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, sorry, I'm not a great public speaker, and I really do appreciate you guys listening to me today.
Thank you, Jen. And next is Ken Bates.
Thank you for considering the Bass Lake access. Just to reiterate what Jen was saying, there's 17 households that are invested in having some access to the lake. Very few of them are here tonight. They're busy working, whatever. There's 5 on Lakeview Drive, 7 on Road 17, and 5 of us on South Bass Lake. I'm on South Bass Lake Road myself. Carpenter by trade. Pardon, to reiterate again what Jen was saying, there's many of us would donate money to the cause and build stairs to whatever parameters you guys choose as far as safety and stuff. Stairs were taken out, I believe, 18 maybe, 2018. 4 years prior to that, I took my dog for a walk at least twice a day, went over down the stairs, just enjoyed the lake for a minute and back up and home. Would be curious, really, if there's any minutes of meetings that you guys had or how it came about that the stairs were taken out of there. In my opinion, it would have took very little to beef them up to good safety standards. They were in a fine state of structural repair as far as I was concerned. They needed to be mounted to the bedrock at the bottom, and the platform at the top that you got onto the stairs was a little bit loose, but not in the sense of falling down. It's just not fast. Would have taken very little to make them safe. In my opinion, licensed carpenter, 35 years. So familiar with structurally sound. Just like you guys to weigh that in on your opinion on the access to Bass Lake.
Thank you. And next is Phyllis Sprout.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councillors and staff, thank you for having us here this evening. And thanks for the time you've allotted for us. We really appreciate it. I also want to thank Niall and all the staff for the thorough research and careful review of this issue. Lastly, I'd like to thank Richard Chamberlain, whom you all met last week. He's taken a great deal of time out of his own busy schedule to respectfully present our side of the issue. And I could probably end my presentation, and many of you say, okay, good enough, right here, right now, but I'm just going to paraphrase what he said, which just struck me last week as I watched the meeting. Access to this stunning natural resource should not be limited to those who can afford it. As I'm sure you all know, there's been an incredible amount of drama around this issue. My father was actually a city councillor and a regional councillor in Port Colborne, Ontario. He was also very passionate about his role in completing the Bruce Trail through Niagara many years ago. So we're very proud of that. In those days, we had one home phone, and it was located in the kitchen by the dinner table. And I'm sure you can all relate, or thankfully not relate anymore, but in those days you had to be quiet through dinner because my father was on the phone with Mrs. McGillicuddy, who was discussing how Mr. Brown's fence is impinging on her prize rose bush, for what seemed like hours on end. So I'm just cite this silly example simply to emphasize that there's a lot of drama, and I think we need to cut through the drama and get to the facts of the matter. As such, I'm going to try to focus exclusively on the facts, and I'll go as quickly as I can. Fact number one, there are 7 homes, as a few people have mentioned, on Lakeview Drive with waterfront access. 6 of those are vacation homes or second homes for these families, and all of them are $1 million plus second homes. Each of them is occupied 50 to 75 days of the year, which is roughly 20%. From Thanksgiving to May 24 weekend, several of these houses are unoccupied. Finally, 5 out of 7 of these Lakeview front property owners are adamantly lobbying for the shutdown of Bass Lake access. Several of them have expressed concern about the devaluation of their investments. The other 2 families with lakefront access include Richard Chamberlain's, who you met last week or heard from last week, and our family. And I think incidentally and very importantly, and I think if you don't hear anything I say, but you hear this, our home is at the end of that road, right beside the public access land where we are proposing to reinstate lake access. So I think if anyone should be concerned, you would think that it would be our property. And I'm here today to say that it's about time to turn this around. And that's why I felt it was really important to drive here 2 hours and drive home 2 hours to do so. Fact number 2, there are 6 homes on the other side of the Lakeview Drive, non-lakefront, and approximately, I think as Ken stated, something like 13 other homes who have stated they would very much like to have reinstate their access to this beautiful natural resource. With the exception of 3 of these families, they all live year-round in these homes, work in the community, and therefore contribute to the local economy. I just want to point out that these people call Georgian Bluffs home and not an investment. 2 of the 3 who do not live there year-round are actually in the process of selling their properties. The access that they and their families enjoyed for close to 40 years was taken away again without their knowledge or consent, and certainly without their consultation. Fact number 3, only about a third, I'm sure you all are aware of this, about a third of the entire Bass Lake shoreline actually has development on it. The rest is pretty heavy populated bush, unpopulated, I should say. I'm not quite sure why. I think it's conservation land, etc. So it is a very quiet lake. There have been several long weekends in the middle of the summer where we're quite literally shocked at how empty the lake is. So it just seems like such a shame. We've said this, so the 3 years we've been there, it does seem like a shame that the beauty and enjoyment of this beautiful natural resource is limited to a select few. We truly feel it's unconscionable and immoral that access to Bass Lake would be denied to anyone who wants to enjoy it. This is not an issue of overloading the lake by any stretch of the imagination. Fact number 4, there will be few to no wild parties and crazy noise disturbances or increased crime. This, of course, is the argument that those who are opposing it are raising and putting forth. You're probably wondering how I can make such a bold, emphatic statement and claim it as fact, no less. We're relatively new to the neighborhood and we aren't fortune tellers. It's actually really very simple. The fellow who succeeded in having the stairs removed attended council meetings very, very regularly to promote this cause. And I understand that many of you weren't part of that or weren't there at the time. But when we first met him, he told us that once there were a couple of teenagers on the dock and they actually threw their pop bottles into his recycling bin. Travesty. That was the best he could do. That was the only story we ever heard told by anyone. And as I said, this neighborhood loves drama. So if there was a story to tell, I'm sure we would have heard it. At the end of the day, the reason cited for removal of the stairs was safety concerns. And as Ken's talked about this, I won't go any further into that. But I have not heard once that those stairs were removed due to constant bylaw infractions. No one has cited the numerous fines and penalties and constant attendance of the bylaw officers at that site, at least not to my knowledge and what I've been able to find out. There are no stories of emergency vehicles being blocked. If there were truly any of these things, I can guarantee you that we would have heard about it constantly and probably blown up beyond recognition. Not one juicy story. And just I want to take a minute here. I think it stands to reason that everyone in our community wants a safe and reasonably quiet enjoyment of their property. The resident whose families own the property for 40 years, along with the ones who have lived here for 10 to 15 years, know firsthand there were no wild and loud parties, no trash all over the place, and certainly no blockage of emergency vehicles. The person who incessantly hectored the council to have the stairs removed and finally succeeded lived close by to the stairs, and based on our experience with him, he was on a first name basis of the bylaw authorities. He wouldn't have been pushing that speed dial button the second there was drinking in public, noise infractions, etc. The only way this man could get this access removed was by finally coming up with a safety concern. It's too bad this squeaky step didn't get fixed, and as Ken has pointed out, but there's nothing that any of us can do about this right now. Furthermore, reasonable and fair people, including everyone in the neighborhood, is saying, let's just bury the hatchet. Whatever happened in the past is in the past, and let's make it work for everyone. And I just want to point out at this time that Jen and Richard went to the community, the road meeting, and they spent a considerable amount of time listening to the concerns of the people who are opposed to this. And I give them full kudos for that. It was very, very impressive. And at that meeting, the entire group agreed that they would remain open-minded to developing a solution that would be practical and acceptable to all residents of the community. So I'm just skipping forward because a lot has been mentioned already, but
I will point out, Phyllis, that you're past your 5-minute
Oh.
mark, so well past it. So
I'm so
wrap
sorry.
up it.
Wrapping up.
please.
I didn't read the fine print. I apologize. All right. So I think I'm pretty well wrapped up. I'll just say that at the time, many residents were shocked, angered, dismayed when town work crews showed up with the chainsaws, and they watched in horror as these very close to safe stairs and dock they had enjoyed and loved for so many years were cut up and hauled away. I just want to say in closing, I don't think access, as Canadians, we pride ourselves, I think, and I love the opening of the the statement on we pride ourselves in fairness, justice, equity, inclusion, and denying local residents access to that lake just goes against everything. Certainly, I believe, and I'm on the lake, as I say. I don't think I can emphasize that enough. I have lake access. I have nothing to gain but it. Thank you for your time over time.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And we will move on. The next item I will just read is about items not on the agenda. So any person who wishes to appear before council regarding an item not on the agenda may make written application to the clerk by the Thursday preceding the meeting they wish to speak at. To register, go to www.georgianbluffs.ca/delegations or call the clerk's office at 519-376-2729, extension 603. And we are moving on now to our consent agenda. Do any members wish to pull items from the consent agenda? Councillor Coburn.
If it so pleases council, I would like to pull 9.1.1 and 9.5.1, please.
Are there any other items that council wishes to pull? Seeing none, the recommendation is that Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs adopt the consent agenda for information as circulated, less items 9.1.1 and 9.5.1, and that all actions contained thereon are hereby approved. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Coburn. Is there any discussion? I will call the vote. All in favor? Is carried. Thank you. We will then go to 9.1.1, and I will turn it over to you, Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. I think just an easy question for staff through you. I feel like I might be missing some context, but this one is the long-term electricity procurement update. It looks like it might be part of an email, but it sort of looks like something that might have been copied and pasted from a website. And I was just wondering if some further context could be added. Was this sent specifically to us, or is this just a shout out to anyone considering this type of project? Or are we missing perhaps a first page for that document? Thank you.
I may be able to speak to that one. I think this is one that came to me and I just forwarded it to have it included on an agenda, but okay. And there wasn't anything else with there, was it? It just was exactly like that. It wasn't really addressed to anybody in particular.
So it's not suggesting that we've missed any steps or that we're involved in any way in this type of procurement process. It's just for information.
I think it is just information on the procurement process that ISO is going through at this time and the next steps that they are planning on taking, just so that we're aware of that. And then on to 9.5.1.
So this is our, thank you, Mayor Carlton, our January to September financial reports. And partly because I thought we should make Sam do a little work. But I just wondered for the public as well, is there anything that you would like to highlight in particular in this most recent update for our finances? Anything that jumps out at you as being concerning in terms of our spending at this moment? And I would appreciate that. Thanks.
Yes, so through the mayor to council. At the end of our third quarter, we were sitting pretty comfortable compared to our budget. Now, I do say that and recognize I do anticipate and expect there to be a operating surplus at the end of 2023. Most of that is linked directly to staff vacancies that I'm projecting being about $500,000, but that number is subject to change. And we also have had much higher prime rates, which has resulted in our interest income being much higher than budgeted. And we had even increased that budgeted interest amount. So both of those will contribute to an operating surplus. From a capital side, as part of, I'm not sure if it will be part of the base budget on November 15th or the strategic session on the 4th, but we will provide you with an update of the status of where we are sitting on our capital projects. So that will be coming as well to give a bit more detail towards that. But at the end of the third quarter, we also still do have quite a few invoices we are waiting on from summer operations. And then we haven't got into our last hump of our winter control season. So we will see many expenses related to that, which is why that department looks very low in actuals compared to budget. If there are specific questions, speak gladly.
that answer your concerns, Councillor Coburn? Or you have
Yeah, for sure. I didn't actually have any concerns. I just wondered if there was anything in particular you wanted to, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, does anyone else on council have questions regarding that? Seeing none, we now need a motion to accept both of those items. Just the financial, the other was just for information, so we don't need anything further. Okay, so could I have a mover and a seconder to accept the financial reports, please? Councillor Coburn, Councillor Winters, is there any further discussion? I will call the vote. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to correspondence. Participation Lodge Grey Bruce Municipal Support Request. Does any member wish to comment? Councillor Day.
I was wondering if anyone had some insight into what a municipality could do to support their request to the provincial government. If I'm interpreting it correctly, it felt as though the letter were addressed to a different level of government and it was sent for our information. But if there's a way that we can support Participation Lodge, then I would be interested in hearing ideas if there is something that we can do.
Councillor Coburn, go ahead.
I mean, I suppose we could consider a resolution to be sent to the provincial government and include our support around their recommendation of an increase in base annual funding. As a suggestion, staff may have more to add.
Through Mayor Carlton, no, I think we would be able to do that if that was a suggestion of council. That would be something we could do.
That was the way I read that letter, that they were asking for not financial support from us, but to support them at a higher level of government, that they push that through. So do we need a motion to bring that back as a resolution then?
Through you, Mayor Carlton, staff could be directed to provide correspondence in support of the request by the Participation Lodge. And we can do that tonight. Alternatively, you could direct staff to go away and craft something to bring back to the next meeting of council.
All right, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Pringle.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Carlton. Is there any way we can, we're gonna try and push this through a little bit farther, that we could include the county, 9 municipalities? A little more bite on it, hopefully.
Okay, so do we want to have that come back then, say to our next meeting? And have staff craft something, or do we want to do that kind of on the fly now? Councillor Winters?
I would think it'd be appropriate to direct staff to bring it back to a next meeting. I think that'll give it more teeth. It'll show up on our agenda more on a regular basis. We can make sure what we're doing.
I would agree. Good suggestion. Thank you. So we will leave that as direction and move on to the next item. Okay. That's what I was looking for, a yes. Yep, perfect, thank you. Okay, so the next item is the invitation to interactive webinar on public school closures in Ontario. Does any member wish to comment? Sorry, I'm just trying to get it pulled up here. I think that one was just received by us as information. If anybody wanted to follow up on that, it would be in your own time as you feel necessary or not. So we will receive that one for information. Committee reports. We're on to Committee of the Whole. The recommendation is that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on October 11th, 2023 be adopted, including recommendations COW 2023-106 to COW 2023-112. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Perhaps before I go that route, Are there any of those in there that anyone wants to pull and vote on separately, or are we moving them all through together from that last meeting? Okay, seeing none, can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Winters, Councillor Scholz, is there any discussion? I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Let me just get forward here in my paper. We are over to staff reports. Councillor Day.
If we just could take a minute to explain to those in the audience, perhaps, that the committee of the whole looked at Bass Lake. So our wording for that was there shall be no action taken in respect to the three accesses in care control of the township of Bass Lake. They shall remain in public ownership stewarded by the township. And to skip a step and go right to the bottom, the township is receptive to reviewing and considering a future proposal if one is made from a group of residents and operated, I'm sorry, I'm not reading very clearly, from a resident group owned and operated access being established on township property. So that has passed.
Thank you for clarifying it. That was somewhat why I was asking if anyone wanted to pull one out of there. So, we've just moved ahead with the decision that was started last week. Okay. Okay, thank you for attending this evening. So moving on to staff reports. The recommendation that council approve the expense of $664.13 in addition to the annual professional development allotment to allow Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn to attend the 2023 Energy Symposium through Association of Municipalities of Ontario and Local Authority Services on behalf of the Township of Georgian Bluffs. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Scholz, is there any discussion? I think I would just comment that this is allowing Councillor Coburn to attend another educational opportunity, we'll call it, for the township beyond what her stipulated conference amount is each year. So seeing no other, Councillor Coburn.
Yeah, I think I asked this last time, but just to be clear, I would not want to ask for this if we had depleted that budget line. So I understand that there's lots of money left for education, and so I'm okay either way. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other discussion, I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item has to do with the 2023 Volunteer of the Year deadline extension request. And the recommendation is that council extend nominations for the 2023 Volunteer of the Year awards for an additional 4 weeks, and that staff be directed to advertise that extension on the township's website. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Winters, Councillor Day. Is there any discussion or any questions on this? Councillor Coburn, go ahead.
So I like this recommendation, and I'm assuming that we didn't get a whole lot of response this year. So hopefully we can throw that out there to or through some different media channels. I wonder if council would be interested in considering, I guess we would need permission from folks, but to bring forward some of the nominations from last year. We did receive quite a few, and they were all excellent candidates. It was really hard to decide, and I just worry that perhaps those people feel like they've had their shot and that's it. And I'm just wondering if we might be able to consider some of those again this year with their permission.
Personally, I don't feel comfortable with that. I think they were nominated in that year, that I think we should go with nominations for it this year. That's my perspective. I'll open it up for the rest of council to Councillor Day.
I wonder if the people who made the nominations to find perhaps compromise could be contacted to see if they would like their nomination to stand for this particular year, because some of those folks had made extensive years-long debt contributions to the community. So I don't imagine, unless there's, I imagine there's still good candidates for the award. Sorry.
I would agree. They're quite, yeah, if they were nominated yesterday, last year, they're definitely good candidates. I just hesitate in us bringing something forward because they didn't get awarded last year. I would sooner see them be nominated again this year. Now, if that means reaching out to the people who did nominations to ask if they would do that again this year, I would have more comfort with that, I think. Councillor Coburn.
So that's what I was suggesting, and I'm sorry that I wasn't clear about that. Yeah, we would not automatically go ahead and throw their names in. We would want to contact them to make sure that the nominator feels comfortable doing that again. It's just, last year was our first year, and so we got a great number of really, really valuable employees nominated, and I don't know if we stipulated that you can, nominate people again in another year, but it sort of left us with perhaps less of a pool of folks to choose from. And I just think that's too bad. It was steep competition last year because we had, so many good nominations. So yeah, I mean, I think we want to consider all of those folks, as Councillor Day said. Many of them have been volunteering for almost a lifetime. So it's not like it was just in that year that they contributed towards our communities.
Okay, given that, I would agree. Carla, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Carlton, to council. So the existing policy does stipulate that somebody cannot be nominated within 5 years. So it would have to be after the 5-year stipulation. Asterisks, you can always waive that policy if that's what you wish. And also, I think there may be some fairness to that, considering the categories have changed fairly substantially. So I would be happy to take that direction away if that is acceptable to the rest of council.
I'm seeing nods all around here. I'm looking to Councillor Thompson and Shouldice online. I'm seeing nods there as well. Okay. So I will turn it back to our acting clerk.
Mayor Carlton. So our acting CEO has just brought up a great point about maybe amending this motion to waive that policy and provide that direction as part of the motion that's on the floor.
Okay, so I need a mover and seconder to amend the policy to amend the motion to waive the policy. Okay. Councillor Coburn and Deputy Mayor Pringle. So I will call the vote on the amended motion. All in favor? That is carried, and we will go back to the main motion, and I will call the vote there. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. So we are moving on to bylaws now. So I'll read the recommendation here. It's whereas council has given consideration to the written comments submitted by the agencies in the decision on proposed zoning bylaw amendment application Z07-21 for 2077-516 Ontario Limited for property located at 503-139 Grey Road 1, Keppel. And whereas council has considered oral submissions made at the public meeting, therefore be it resolved that council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs is satisfied that the proposed amendment is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020 and other governing regulations, and that bylaw 2023-057 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Winters, Councillor Shouldice. Is there any discussion? Councillor Day.
I think mostly looked at this one and not talked about this one. If I'm remembering this property correctly. And there's just many moving parts, or not moving parts, but many parts to this particular property with the boathouse encroaching on adjacent shorelines for durations of marina's use, the commercial usage on the confusing shoreline in terms of what can happen there and who monitors it. So I wouldn't mind a little discussion or just an overview from staff to make sure that we've taken everything into consideration that we should be taking into consideration when we make this decision tonight.
I think what adds to the confusion on this one is I think it's been on 2 or 3 agendas and then pulled for some reason. And I think we're maybe all left a little unclear as to why that is. So, Michael, if you could maybe update us a little bit, please.
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor Carlton, Councillor Day. This is a complicated series of applications that were happening with this property. It started from a severance application that divided the existing residential use that's on property from the commercial enterprise, the marina, and other things that are happening. Excuse me. So in order to have that severance work properly, it resulted in zoning amendment was required to recognize the different uses. That's kind of what we're seeing here. And I do have to apologize. This was brought to council earlier, and through the committee of the whole. And at that time, the draft bylaw, I guess you want to call it, that went to the committee, had some technical errors. So we, with the consultants and the landowners, have bounced back and forth a bit with this to bring it forward as we see it today. So essentially, this bylaw more or less focuses on the on 2 parts. There's the residential part. So when we've seen the bylaw, it's a shoreline residential -95, that's our 95. And then the commercial piece is the CM-1-8 dash H. You got hard to say. So the start with the CM-1 zone. And essentially what's happening there is when you're actually out on site, there's a lot happening. There's a number of, well, first of all, there's the marina use itself. There's a boathouse that's on the marina that encroaches slightly into the shoreline road allowance. And there are some myriad of accessory structures that are in that marina. So what this bylaw is doing is, first of all, is recognizing that because we've severed that property now down, so the marina use as a property no longer complies with the lot frontage and lot area provisions in the bylaw. So we've recognized that. We've also recognized the boathouse, which is accessory use to the marina use, is permitted to encroach on the adjacent shoreline allowance, provided nothing more happens to that boat allowance. If it is relocated, it has to be moved off the road allowance, and no additional buildings will be permitted. New buildings will be permitted in the shorelines. It's also recognizing that on that commercial property, there's an existing trailer that is used right now as kind of a studio space, and it's recognizing the use of that trailer. There's also a storage container, an existing electric shed, and privy, and some other pieces that are all existing there, and they're also recognized on there. So what's happening is The marina use is complicated. There's a number of structures on the site. There's some encroachments, and it's recognizing all of those and legalizing as a passive bylaw. It's a way for planners to kind of say, okay, we see everything you have right now, and we're going to recognize those uses in this bylaw so they're no longer non-conforming or illegal. They're uses that are. The last bit for that the CM1 piece is that base level conservation is where you recognize that most of that land is hazard land. There's steep slopes, there's setbacks from shoreline, but there is a small building envelope, and that recognizes that there's a building envelope that could be built upon, and that envelope is recognized in the bylaw itself. The other thing that seems kind of complicating to that commercial zone is that there's a hold provision put up in it that although all those existing uses are recognized, that if a future new use were implemented, Saugeen Ojibwe Nation would want an archaeological assessment. That's what that hold provision is all about. So that's kind of the commercial piece, is recognizing all these existing uses, the idea that there is a small building envelope that could be used for future construction, but if that happens, then archaeological assessment. The other component is the SR 95, which is the shoreline residential use that's recognizing the residential, I wouldn't even call it a dwelling, it's kind of a compound, I suppose. It does have a dwelling, it has a short-term accommodation use and equipment shed that's all under one roof, but open to the outside. So it's a funny residential use, but it's there. And that site-specific use recognizes a reduced lot frontage and lot area, and it also recognizes that there are some. There's an existing gear shed that is encroaching on the shoreline road allowance, and that gear shed is relocated or should be moved off the shoreline range, just like the boathouse and many others. So a lot of moving parts I recognize, but it's rather than coming back with a series of bylaws, it's easier just to bring one bylaw that recognizes all the players, all the parts of it.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Coburn.
Through you, Mayor Carlton, thank you to our planner, Bink. I'm looking at the diagrams included in the package. I'm struggling a little bit because the structures are not labeled in any way, and so I'm trying to guess which is which. How long has this property been non-conforming? Like, is this a new thing, or are these buildings that are encroaching, for example, and the other issues, is that long-standing? Like, are we talking dating back decades and decades? Or I don't want to be blunt, but maybe I'm feeling a little cranky tonight, so I'm probably going to be blunt. Sometimes it feels like we just let people do what they want to do, and then we bring it back to council and say, okay, let's make it legal non-conforming, and then we don't have to worry about this anymore. So my first question is what it is. My second question is, what implications does passing this have for our future shoreline uses? Is this setting precedents? I guess I want to know what the bigger picture for our municipality is here.
Thank you, and to you, Mayor Carlton, to Councillor Coburn. There are some existing uses that are longstanding. I believe the marina has been there for quite some time. And with it, we have these small accessory structures that some, like the on-site privy, appear to be fairly recent. The boathouse piece is more of a sea container. It's kind of turned into that boathouse, so it's fairly recent as well. There's an electrical shed, and I should point out that you're correct. It would be really good if the bylaw kind of showed where those are. The boathouse obviously is in the water. The electrical shed, the privy, and the trailer are actually up, skirting around the building envelope there, creating hazard lands and whatnot up on the slope itself. Those structures are the electrical shed seems to be fairly new, but the privy and electrical shed are small enough that they did not trigger the need for building. So we didn't catch them that way. The trailer obviously would need a building permit, and the boathouse seems to have just been being a sea container. Well, it's just placed on the existing dock area that surrounds it. So the marina use itself, I believe, is longstanding. The privy electrical sheds seem to be fairly new by the looks of it. I'd say probably sometime in the last 2 or 3 years. The residence on the other side is also fairly new. I don't have the exact date of that building permit in mind, but it is it's, I would say, relatively new within the last 2 or 3 years. And the applications themselves for the severance go back to 2021. That's why we're seeing this. The bylaw is 7-21. So it's been on the books trying to get through the process for the last 2 years.
And the impacts to future is
It's still with it. The as a planner, I'm always worried about future impacts and setting precedents. In this case, this is a fairly unique property in that the marina use, I don't know how long that marina has been there, but it may have gotten permissions to originally start up, and then uses tend to kind of grow and become a little organic over the years. But in this case, having the site-specific zoning on here really nails it down to not creating a precedence. We're not changing the overall zone for the commercial use or residential use. Those overall zone provisions still exist in the zoning bylaw untouched. These amendments, as we see come through with this one or any of the zoning amendments we see, have to be and are always treated on a site-by-site basis. Even though if, say, for example, if I had a marina a kilometer down the road and said, well, I like what they did there, I want to do that. You know, and I came to the township and said, I want to do this. The planners and the building officials at the township would look at that as a entirely new situation. So I can't, just because somebody else did it doesn't that it creates a precedent. If we were to amend the parent zone, said, oh, we like this idea, let's change the whole zone. And then anybody else with that zone provision on the property could use those new provisions. But in these cases, we always nail them down to a site-specific zone that only impacts.
Any other comments? I have one on this one. I guess when I first saw this one coming through, I was under the maybe misunderstanding that they were taking the residential portion and separating it from the commercial. But now I'm seeing a building envelope on the commercial side. Does that building envelope then become a new residence, or is that for a different purpose on that side of the property?
To Mayor Carlton, there was some discussion about having, next, back up a little tiny bit. The commercial zone, as written, does permit a residential unit in a commercial zone. Usually, and it would have to be accessory to that commercial use. So there has been some discussion about having that accessory dwelling unit located within that. It would have to be located within that building envelope area. But the bylaw as written is saying that with the exception of that one new dwelling unit, whenever it's coming in proposed, no other uses can be used for residential uses in that commercial zone. So it's trying not to confuse you. I'm sorry if I'm stumbling a little bit here, but the principle, the severance, the overall severance divided the existing residence from that commercial use. So the commercial use is now saying, well, we can't rely on that residence anymore. They're a separate lot, they're a separate entity. But what if we wanted to have a caretaker for that commercial use, live on the property? That's the reason behind having an accessory residential use to commercial use. The store owner lives above the store owner, or the marina operator lives on the property also. And the bylaw does recognize that. There's that potential for that. That would have to be within that building envelope, and it would conservation authority approval. It would have to go through an archaeological assessment.
Okay, thank you. That makes more sense to me now. Any other questions, Councillor Coburn?
And thank you for asking that question, Mayor Carlton. I was wondering about the little black dotted lines as well. So who determines if the use of that potential new build is actually legitimate accessory to the commercial use?
To Mayor Carlton, to Councillor Holbrook, that would be the Township Planning Department and the building concert with the building officials when using the built, and ensure that that use complies with the zone. So that's how this would follow now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dick.
Looking ahead to future, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna, one comment that Councillor Coburn made about folks changing properties and then us creating those legal non-conforming designations for that land. I think it might be helpful in the future to know how long the marina has been there. And I know that tonight might not be the night to get that information, but it might help us make more educated decisions in future scenarios.
Okay, thank you. And if there's no other questions, I will call the vote on this. All in favor? That is carried. We are down to, there's no unfinished business, new business. The recommendation regarding the land acknowledgement statement is whereas the Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs adopted policy admin 03-21 land acknowledgement statement in July of 2021. And whereas Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs is committed to meaningful reflection and sharing of the land acknowledgement statement as part of the decision-making process. And whereas Council approved an amendment to the policy in June of 2023 to provide that the statement be read on a volunteer basis by members of Council and staff with a personal reflection where possible to reflect on the statement's meaning for the work being undertaken by the Township. And whereas the Township is committed to ensuring the dialogue around truth and reconciliation continues in a meaningful way. Now therefore be it resolved that Council hereby approves the following changes to Policy Admin 0321 Land Acknowledgement Statement. 1, that the land acknowledgement statement be amended to include, in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge at the beginning. And number 2, that the reading and personal reflection by members of Council and staff occur at the first Council meeting of each month on a volunteer basis. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Day, Councillor Coburn. Any discussion? Councillor Day.
Thank you for letting me start this conversation. I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you to council and staff for trying this completely new way of doing land acknowledgements for me. And it's been really lovely to hear thoughts from council as well as the staff people who have spoken before meetings. I like something that Councillor Coburn said tonight as well about the land acknowledgement being a working document and something that we can change with time. And I would like to think that how we give the land acknowledgement is something that we can change, and as we sort out a way that works to provide that personal reflection and action as well as the important words. And I am by no means sorrowful to see a change to how we present the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn.
And I as well like the additional phrase at the beginning. Mayor Carlton has added, I support that. Our trustee CAO has confirmed with me behind the scenes, and I thank him for that SON was also consulted. I wonder if it wouldn't hurt to reach out to those groups again and just say, are we still in line? Is there anything that you would like done differently? If that's something that we think would be valuable.
Curly, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Carlton, I did just want to point out that this policy does have provision for a comprehensive review every 2 years. It has been 2 years since this policy was implemented. So perhaps if you're in support of the recommendation as it stands, an amendment to the motion to provide direction to staff to consult SON as part of the comprehensive review could be given to me.
Okay. And as the person who brought this forward, if no one else wants to speak to it, I will. Part of my reasoning in this, and I have said this before, is we say the land acknowledgement, we don't say previous to this why we're doing it. And I think we want to be very clear about our why. I also, the idea of only doing it at the reflection at the first council meeting of the month, I think makes it more meaningful. It means we're going to do it 12 times a year, and it's going to be open to council members and staff. So it doesn't feel like we're pulling teeth to get somebody to do it, because I think that takes away from the meaning of it. And I think if we sign up in advance, then we just get, the clerk would be open to giving us a little reminder in advance that it's our turn coming up. I think it makes it a little easier for council members and staff to know that it's only going to be that one time a year, maybe, that each of us has to do it. Gives us a little more time to be prepared and ready for it. And again, my main thing is it needs to be meaningful. It can't be something we're just doing by rote because it's there in front of us and we read it and we move on and we haven't really paid any attention to it. So with that, if there's no other comments, I will call the vote. We need the amended motion first to add that I'll let Carly word that.
Through you, Mayor Carlton, to council. So I would recommend we add a line that says that staff be directed to consult Saugeen Ojibwe Nation as part of the comprehensive review of the policy due in 2023.
Something else that just popped in my head. It seems to me the last time when we actually created this, we consulted with Mawikbadong as well and brought their expertise into it. And I think that would be a good one to have their input, and that might bring in both Nawash and Son. Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder for the amendments. Councillor Winters, Councillor Coburn. I will call the vote on the amendment. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And then back to the main motion. I will call the vote there. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you for supporting me. Does any member wish to provide a notice of motion this evening? Seeing none, we are now going to go into closed session. The recommendation that Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs move into closed session at 6:15 p.m. in the council chambers with the acting CAO, Director of Community and Environmental Services, and acting clerk remaining in the room to discuss 18.1 personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, open meeting exemption B of section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Day. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We are now in closed session, so we'll wait for staff. Okay, we are now back in open session at 7:13 PM. Council moved into closed session under open meeting exemption B of section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001. As a result of closed session discussions, direction was provided. Our confirming bylaw for tonight, the recommendation that bylaw number 2023-068, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on October 18th, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Day, Councillor Coburn. Is there any discussion? I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. And date of the next regular meeting would be now. If there's no other business, I will now call for an adjournment of this meeting. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Day, Councillor Winters, all in favor. That is carried. We are finished with that one.